Hey there, my name is Przemek and this is the review of the last Shrine album called Nausicaä. This time I won't show you the CD because I don't have a physical version yet. I hope to get one soon. My relationship with Shrine goes way back to 2006 or 2007. It was the time when I was digging a lot of ambient experimental net labels catalogs. In the end, it turned out that about 90% of them was pretty crappy, and there's no secret about it. But one day I stumbled upon a Swedish net label called Miracle Music, and there were three really fantastic releases. One of them was Mortisium. It was a project by Ronnie Jacobson, I think. It was his only release, a short EP of calm organic ambient called Dream State. One of them was Aidan Baker's Within the Final Circle. It was my first encounter with Aidan Baker's music. Later I became a huge fan of his solo works, but also his other projects like Nadia, which I got to know thanks to Christo from Shrine. And the third one was Shrine, Harmony, Bliss, Rust. I was amazed by the atmosphere, by the feeling of that three tracks, which were as organic as synthetic. It was, I don't know if you remember Hyperion Novel by Dan Simmons. It was a novel consisting of 7 stories of 7 pilgrims who arrived on a pilgrimage to a Hyperion planet. One of them first was told by the priest. Leonard Hoyt was his name, I believe, and there was this fragment when one of the characters had to escape through the, let me think, it was a kind of electric forest with Tesla trees. So this Harmony, Bliss and Rust had something similar feeling. Or for example, Horizon Zero Dawn, the game I played years later, the game about the post-apocalyptic world where the civilization has collapsed, where the nature rules again. But the integral part of this nature and a very tangible reminder of the past are the mechanical animals created by artificial intelligence. So this is the kind of feeling that the Shrine music had back then and has even now. I remember I checked the project later, checked our Polish distros if they had any releases by Shrine. I had no expectations, but I was pretty surprised that one of them, War Office Propaganda, which later was renamed to Rage in Eden, had a Shrine full debut released by Corvus Records. It was called The Final Asylum. So I bought it and it blew me away. I wrote to Christo with the interview request. It was my second interview ever, made for now defunct Beast of Prey magazine. We did the interview, we were corresponding quite a lot back then, later, and I think I can say we became buddies. I have a lot of sentiment for the Final Asylum, but also I was very happy to observe Shrine's constant progress over the years. Sure, during all these years, some of the albums I liked better, like Somnia or Ordeal, 26th April 1986. That was the album dedicated to Chernobyl disaster. Some of the albums I liked a little bit less, but objectively speaking, each subsequent album was bringing something new, the better sound, more complex and multi-layered compositions, etc. And I can't say he has ever recorded poor or even mediocre album. I was happy to see that his stuff was released by the best dark ambient labels like Cyclic Glow or Cry Chamber, and using a soccer terminology, I could say I became a Shrine Ultras. 15 years has passed and we get the last Shrine album called Nausicaä. Last and seemingly final, as Christo announced an indefinite break from making music, maybe for a couple of years, maybe forever, as he wants to focus on raising his newborn daughter. Congratulations, by the way. Nausicaä is once again an unusual concept. I say unusual because his previous album, Celestial Fire, was based on a video game, Tomb Raider 2, so not a typical dark ambient concept. As for Nausicaä, let me quote the label's note. Just a moment. New album by Shrine and his signature sound design, this time based on the Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind, a Japanese manga from the 80s by Hayao Miyazaki, and the subsequent anime of the same title. Nausicaä is a story of Earth's future, 1,000 years after the collapse of civilization, when most of the planet is covered by a toxic jungle filled with deadly spores that choke all human life. Haven't seen this one, to be honest. I'm not a big fan of manga anime myself, but I have a lot of respect for Miyazaki, as some of his movies became the milestones for this form of animation, and those I have seen are simply very good movies, no matter of the genre, like Howl's Moving Castle, Princess Mononoke, or Spirited Away. I mentioned the progress in terms of sound and composition, but it's also obvious that with time and subsequent albums, Shrine's music was becoming noisier and more intense. Sometimes the concept itself was darker, and such approach was subordinate to create an oppressive atmosphere, like on a Nihil album, I don't know, perhaps you remember Screenium track. But sometimes this intensity, perhaps even a certain aggressiveness, manifested itself in louder and denser but still ambient cascades of sound pouring over the listener. Not because it's supposed to be dark and aggressive, not making the listener stand in, let's say, in front of hellish pit, but rather in front of a giant waterfall, or on a cliff with a raging sea below his feet, something like that. Honestly speaking, I thought this Nausicaä concept would result in a calmer recording, but in the end this album is like a combination of all the inspirations and atmospheres of all the past Shrine music. Sorry. What was I? Okay, let's take for example the second track, The Twilight of Man, with industrial rhythms, harsh backgrounds and sounds reminding of aliquot singing, while for example the third track, Daikaisho, it's a Japanese word, I believe. It's like a variation over the Iron Water, the track from Somnia. There's a very similar melody, and I don't believe it's a coincidence. In the other track, Into the Periphery, you have those melancholic and tranquil melody reminding me a bit of Binary Creation, the opening track for the Final Asylum, although with much more expanded background, so to speak. And for example, Extinction, maybe the noisiest track Shrine has ever made, as it is a harsh wall of sound, but at the same time the sadness and the certain fragility of the music never goes off Christo's radar. This Extinction is like a cover of Nausicaä. It's like a little girl standing in front of a giant. Sorry for the noises in the background. It is my cat playing with the box, which she loves very much. So yeah, the moods are intertwining, but Nausicaä as a whole is a coherent album. You don't feel that one track doesn't fit to the rest or something. And he's still faithful to this organic slash synthetic idea of sound I told you about. And the closing composition, A World Reborn, is a dynamic and cinematic piece, which is like, let's say, the end credits of some epic movie. Quite optimistic ending, I'd say. It's like the musician is saying, Shrine is dead, but no worries, I'm fine. It was a nice journey I shared with all of you. Maybe I will return one day. Well, I hope so. For now, this is the end of Shrine, but he left us a nice legacy, and personally, I hope it's not a permanent death, but hibernation, and we'll live to see Christos' music in an indefinite future. I say this will be the longest review I've recorded so far, so it's time to end. Get Nausicaä, it is really great album. Thanks for watching and see you soon.